I try really hard. This is because I just am so oriented to secure attachment that if I get a text, most easy to get me by text, but if I get a text, I just at least send a okay sign or something really so the person knows I got it. And I don't have time to say too much at the moment. There's this responsiveness, and I might say, I'll talk to you at 3, whatever, you get back to people. That really encourages secure attachment, keeping agreements and responsiveness. So these are things we can practice, we can have intention about, and they will, even if you do a little bit more of it, it's just like if you change the direction of a ship, they just change the direction a little bit, it starts having a very big effect over time. So I just want to make sure that everybody leaves with an idea of how they can practice secure attachment skills. One I wanted to mention is the rituals of, like, say you're in a relationship, and even if you're single, this might be something you remember in a relationship or something that you want to create a different kind of ritual with a friend. But in partnerships, it's a little easier because you're, dealing with bedtimes and getting up and all that. But to think about ritual, like, how do you debrief the day? Like, I have a friend and her husband, and they told me this story that they both love chocolate. They don't eat too much of it. They like 1 truffle a day, and they find these really unique truffles. And every night they put this unique truffle on each other's pillow. And then at a set time, they debrief the day, because one likes to go to bed a little early and one goes to bed a little later. So let's say 9 o'clock, they get together, they enjoy their truffles together, and they debrief the day, like what happened that day. And especially if it had something to do with a relationship, like, oh, I know I was in a hurry this morning and I kind of ran out the door and I was abrupt with you about, I don't know, whatever, taking the trash out. And they just repair anything that got a little bit disrupted in their relationship daily. And that really keeps them on track, and it keeps them in a healthy relationship. So repair is one of the number one things that's a hallmark of secure attachment. John Gottman, who studies couples and does all sorts of research, he's amazing. He said that if you really learn to initiate repair, to apologize when you step on somebody's emotional toe, or you do something that you realize later was maybe not your finest hour, that you say, okay, I did that, and you apologize, and a real apology. And also that when someone's trying to apologize with you, even if they're maybe not doing it perfectly, they're not maybe using the exact words you'd like, or they bring you flowers and you really want a candy, whatever, that you allow repair to happen. This even happens with your dog. Your dog gets involved in the trash. He'll be like, all shamed out and everything. You can just say, hey, that's not okay. But then you repair with them. No, I love you anyway. You're fine. And you don't want to put kids in timeout too long either, or you want to not lose connection with them. You want to get back in connection and try to have them give an opportunity to repair with you if they acted out, hit their sister or something like that. But if you have this ability to initiate and also allow yourself to receive repair when that's someone's intention, that the research that John Gottman did shows that you have 85%, that's a huge return on your investment, 85% chance of sustainable well-being in that relationship. So if you don't take anything else away from today, think about it. If you could have a bank account where you could get 85% return, you wouldn't even be buying coffee at the Starbucks or something. You'd be putting all your money in there because you'd be getting so much return on it. So if you only think of one thing from today, if you can think of someone that maybe you've got a little something uncomfortable going on, and maybe there's something you can do to repair that relationship. Another takeaway today might be that you take some time to figure out how you want to do that. If there may be a possibility of initiating a repair, or if there's been someone trying to repair with you, but you've been kind of like disgruntled with them and you've sort of blocked it, to see if it would be okay to allow that to happen. Just to try that on to see if that fits for you, because it really can make a huge difference. And even if we try to repair with someone and they don't accept it, it still is a maturing process for us. It's still putting a vote in the direction of increasing our ability to live in secure attachment in the world. So whether somebody else does or doesn't do anything, it's still developing a capacity in us that's really valuable and really maturing. So just something to think about. How many people have someone they can think of? I just do a quick chat response that they need to repair with, or would be willing to maybe move in that direction as you're ready to do it. So I'm just seeing if chat opens up, just to see if anybody relates to this. Yes, people are clapping. I'm getting some yeses, lots of yeses here. And so if you want, part of today, you could have an intention, or even say it out loud to yourself. I'm going to call this person. I'm going to text this person. I'm going to invite this person out to lunch. I'm going to take them on a date to the movies, whatever, to start to reconnect and create repair. You will benefit from it no matter what the other person participates in or doesn't participate. Oh, someone's son, that would be beautiful. Thanks, Marina, for sharing that. So let's take a look now. It's really good to get grounded and secure, and I'm going to give, won't have a little bit less time to go with avoidant and ambivalent, but I want to show you some things that'll help you understand those attachment injuries. And remember, this is nobody's fault. Our caregivers usually, in most cases, did the best they could do, and we inherit our way we parent, usually generationally, or sometimes we're born in a war zone, and regardless of what your parents do, there's so much danger around, you're going to be reacting from the fear of that. You feel the fear in the field. I've had that with when I've done work in, recently war-torn countries. But first of all, our attachment system can shift. So whatever your original attachment style is, it's good to know it because you kind of know some things to look for. But also you can have a mix of attachment styles. You can react to one person because they're stimulating a certain response and you by their attachment style. And then somebody else you have a different attachment reaction to. So there you can have a mix. That's why I'm suggesting you do the quiz a couple times with different people to see how it comes out. And then also it can change back to secure attachment over time, and maybe not 100%, but we get 80%, 90%, we're good. That's good enough. Don't have to be perfect. So let's take a look at kind of what sets up for avoidant. Avoidant, very often, there's a couple different ways people move and away from connection. Avoidant means that usually the child, now we can get a shift attachment styles later in life, but I'm going to talk about caregiving in the time we have. Usually because the parent, one or both, didn't have a capacity to be present. That thing I said was the most important for secure. They just were sort of vacant. So when an infant's looking out in the world and it feels like nobody's there, that's really scary because we're dependent as infants. We need somebody to be there. And sometimes it's benign, a little bit like in terms of there's not a negative action except the lack of presence. And sometimes that's a symptom a parent might be carrying from unresolved trauma. We're human beings. We have unresolved and unfinished business. But the other way can be when a parent's actively rejecting. They're just kind of hateful. When they look at the kid, they're looking at them with, disgust or hatred or, some kind of negative state that then the kid is reacting to, like, oh my God, disconnecting from that because that's really hurtful. And sometimes, they're just not present as energy, but sometimes they're not present physically. So a child can be left alone way too much. They can really be neglected. They can have a huge injury around neglect. Their needs aren't met. The person is not the empathetic other. They're not aligned with the child's state too much of the time, maybe not always, but too much of the time. And the other way it can set up is if the parent shows up, but only in left brain activities, like to teach you to read or to ride your bike or play golf or, do math or something. So you're only related to in a functional way. That can also create avoidant attachment. So because you don't really get the emotional nurturing from right brain to right brain. Attachment happens mostly right brain to right brain. So we have to relate to ourselves and to others from a right brain perspective to really enhance secure attachment. And some parents don't have much access to their right brain, so they aren't able to provide that, and they don't reflect a child's sense of emotion. So like when the child's hurt and sad, they're not saying, they're missing this capacity, which a secure attached parent would have to say, oh, honey, I see you're really sad. I'm just going to be here and hold your hand, or I'm going to give you a big hug, or when you're ready, you can talk to me about what happened at school or whatever happened that was so upsetting. So that's an empathetic other kind of response. But when somebody's had avoidant a caregiving style where parents are more rejecting, they can just go, I'll give you something to cry about. My mom used to say that. So you're getting a little bit of my history in there. And that does not foster a capacity to have empathy for oneself around your emotional state. So you have to learn that later, you heal from that later, right? So some families just aren't oriented to emotional awareness, and that's hurtful to the attachment system. And so a child's going to react to a more negative, non-emotional, non-right brain, non-present parenting style or rejection, critical parents, by disconnecting, like going, okay, that's better for me to be more in myself and not in my experience in the relationship. And actually, that gets tied in to implicit memory. You learn this pattern as a child because it's repeated over and over again, enough of the time that you move to what's called avoidant attachment. And in adults, it's called dismissive attachment. So you learn as a child, and again, this is in unconscious learning, you're developing a blueprint for the relational field. You're learning that the only way to be with your caregivers, the people who are supposed to be taking care of you, ideally, is to disconnect, that they're more comfortable when you're not asking for anything. They're more comfortable when you're not emotional. They're more comfortable when you're not needing anything, which is impossible for an infant. You need tons of stuff, right? We need things in our entire life. But there's this kind of cutting of emotional cues. So often a child won't reach out, or they won't even cry, or they won't ask for what they need when they have words later on, because they're used to this negative, or being made to feel like a burden, or rejected when they have an emotional experience, or when they have a need, or so they are actually, this is the irony of it. They're actually trying to maintain a connection with their caregiver by not having a connection, by disconnecting. Now that's going to sound really weird, but every child has to adapt to the deficit of their caregiver. So I know when we talk about this, sometimes we're going, oh, wow, I had a little of that. You don't have to have everything. You may have some of the key points that I'm mentioning to that you have a part of you that has avoidant attachment. In my history, I feel like I have a little bit of all of them, so I can relate, which helps me as a therapist. But I can see the different reactions to different things that happened in my history took me into different directions. And you may find something similar to that, or you might find that you had a very strong one attachment style reaction. Either way is fine. It's just helpful to know what your knee-jerk reactions are, and to see if you can, over time, pick some of them to shift to a more secure attachment kind of orienting. So that's what we're really looking at to foster. I'm going to give you kind of the appetizer level of that today. It's a big topic. We, of course, teach big courses on this, and we're happy to give you more information. I have a book you can reference if you want. It's called The Power of Attachment, has more than of the exercises than I have time to cover today. But one of the things that's difficult for the avoidant attachment person is that when they looked at their parent, they saw either nothing, vacancy, which is terrifying, or they saw negativity, like being rejected or seen as not okay, or seen with contempt or something. So eye gaze is really tricky. There's lots of different things, but I'm going to give you an eye gaze exercise. So I want you to imagine, and then we'll open chat again for comments, but I want you to imagine looking out into the world, whoever you're looking at, and specifically look at kind eyes, kind, compassionate eyes, looking back at you. That might be coming from your dog, your animal, whatever animal you are connected to. It might be coming from someone you've seen on television. You might be thinking of the Dalai Lama, or, the spiritual teacher. I'm not suggesting any particular religion, but some image you've seen in a church or a mosque or a temple, just something that you feel gives you access to. When you look out, you see kindness. And that sometimes comes from a complete stranger, but it could be your great aunt, it could be one of your children, it could be a pet, it could be anywhere where there's just kindness, that you see it and recognize it, and just let yourself notice that out in the world for a moment. And again, just see if you can feel what happens in your experience. Is there relief? Is there a sense of safety? Is there joy? Is there laughter? Is there heart opening? Just what happens when you look out and you see kind eyes? There's lots of pictures of the Dalai Lama. I think of him because he's been through hell and back, right, with all of what Tibet's been through. But there's this kindness, or Desmond Tutu, or just, lots of different possibilities with that. And you may think of someone personal to you, or you may think of someone you've seen and been impressed by, on YouTube or videos or movies or TV or whatever. So just taking a moment to see that kindness, that's part one, and notice what happens in you. You might jot a note down. And then the next part is really important, is allowing that kindness of the eye gaze that you're seeing, the attachment gaze, to allow that kindness to come into you, to like take it in through your eyes, like your eyes are absorbing and receiving that kindness. Now, sometimes part two is a little harder for people. I had a lovely, joyful, beautiful singer person that was in one of my workshops, and I did this exercise with her, and she could see the kind eyes out there, but when she started to bring them in, she felt this like little, almost like transparent wall that she'd never been aware of, like this membrane. So we just focused on the membrane because something was blocking her from receiving kind eye gaze, which affects your relationships a lot, because then you can't take in the love that's there as much. So she started to see that. And as we just paid attention to that little membrane, very almost imperceptible membrane, she had these memories unpack about having a stepfather who was mean and cruel and sexually abusive. So we unpacked that, of course, worked through that trauma. And she just had to see that implicit memory. That was part of that implicit memory that we have in the title of today's talk, that she started to see that. And as she brought awareness to it, those unconscious memories started to unpack to become conscious memories, and they were painful, but she could see and recognize what it was. And as she saw and recognized it and stayed with it, felt some emotion around it, it just dissipated. And then all of a sudden she could receive all this kindness and compassion in her eyes and in her body and in her experience. So that's what I'm hoping for you, is to see if you can take that in. So let's just take a moment. This is a great exercise in general for everybody, but it's particularly sometimes powerful for someone who's kind of recovering from an attachment gaze injury, from avoidant attachment.